The Local Show, sponsored by Victory in Motion, home of knee repair, not knee replacement, on News Radio 570 WSYR, on 106.9 FM, and live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. The Local Show features in-depth conversation with business owners, employees, and influential business leaders throughout Central New York, exploring their successes, challenges, and reasons for doing business right here in our growing community. The Local Show is produced locally by Zoe Advertising. Now your hosts, Tom and Steve.
Back into it and back at it again. You should look for a little life raft at one of the, what do you call those stores? Sporting goods stores.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Tom.
Well, because the snow is melting at a rapid pace.
Oh,
and I think that we're going to get a little flooding, and it might be your backyard.
Why? Well,
you might have to float around.
I'm okay. My backyard's fine.
Well, yeah.
I live a simple life. By the way, that I could not recall the website we were talking about. That storage place on South Bay.
Yes. Okay.
SelfStorageSyracuse.com. Mm-hmm. Inside climate, all that kind of stuff. I just couldn't recall it, and I didn't have it in front of me, but I wanted to give that. But well, that's I just want everything to melt so I can fish sooner.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if that helps the fishing or doesn't help.
Well,
it
helps. Walleye season closes March 15th. That helps me be able to fish until March 15th if there's any open water,
right,
or in the creeks or everything. But who knows?
But when we have an enormous amount of groundwater that goes into the rivers and things like that, does that help fishing?
No, it makes it annoying because you throw it in, it's like, there it goes.
Yeah,
you know, it's like trying to fish at the top of Niagara Falls. Good luck with that, you know.
Yeah.
So not so much. So.
I remember way back when in the valley when the creek overflowed, and that creek runs, all those residential areas, and we must have had, had to be 4 feet of water.
Wow.
Running through the backyard, and it filled up the truck bays over at Green Hills Farms.
No kidding.
Yeah, they were all filled up.
Well, they're like carp swimming up Route 11.
And when,
kind of thing,
when water recedes, it leaves a wondrous odor that is not pleasant.
True. Speaking of odors.
No, not at all. That's not true. Josh Lange is with us. He's the pastor at Redeemer Church in Syracuse. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. And Steve, I forgive you.
Okay. You have to. It's your job. That's what Tom would say. I beat you to it.
As a pastor, do you ever recommend during this time of year when the snow is melting to build an ark? Or is that not a thing anymore?
No, I think we should be good as long as we don't get the rain.
Right.
If it starts raining, everybody run.
Something that does happen as we get towards spring is Easter, which is explain to people why Easter is important to Christians.
Yeah, for Easter, when we look at the season of Lent here starts, I believe, next week. And then we have, I'll go right to Good Friday and then into Easter morning. But around this time of year is when...
Wait, well, let me interrupt you for a second. I don't know if people really understand what Good Friday is. So why don't you start at Good Friday?
Yeah, so the reason we call it Good Friday is because that is the place in which the justice and the mercy of God met on the cross. And so while you look at it and you're like, man, the death of Jesus Christ, that is a sad thing. And if you think back to those early disciples, I mean, what was going through their mind when they saw Jesus beaten and bloodied and bruised and hanging on a cross?
We're next. Seriously, right?
Yeah,
for many of them, right?
And they were his best friends,
and
arguably, right?
And so, but we know this is that when we look at that cross, we see, as I said, the justice and mercy of God, and we see that Christ gave his life for us. So he lived a perfect life. He went to the cross. And the reason we celebrate on Easter Sunday is because we know that those 3 days later, Christ rose again. And therefore, the resurrection is, for a way to explain it, like the receipt that God accepted the payment of Christ's life on our behalf. And so for the Christian, you simply have to believe and confess this, and you can have that confidence that that work that Christ accomplished on the cross is now applied to your life.
What about Ash Wednesday? When is that?
Wednesday.
I'd have to.
I can't remember when Ash Wednesday is.
I feel like it's next week off the top of my head, but I'd have to.
And what does that signify?
It's the beginning of the season of Lent. Not all of the Christian within Protestant realms would celebrate that.
That's more Catholic thing.
It depends. There's Episcopals on the Protestant side, and maybe a few others.
So there's nothing in the Bible that says go get some ashes on your forehead.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I've never read that.
But I do know that there's intentionality behind it. Even in the keeping of the palm leaves from the previous year, and then using those to create the ash. But again, it's to mark the beginning of a season where you begin to think about the life and death and resurrection of Christ. And so there's an intentionality to it to help you kind of build your life in and around the work of Christ.
Yeah. How do you separate tradition from real faith?
Well, whose tradition?
Well, religious traditions, better said.
I think, a lot of it depends on the human heart, right? And so is the separation necessary is a question that we should ask. And then why are we doing certain things? So when it comes to, for example, a season of Lent, where it's supposed to be a season to reflect upon Christ's death and resurrection, and there's this element of fasting. So I'm going to deny myself this pleasure, this thing, so that I can more fully focus upon Christ. When I think there's that intentionality of it, and that intentionality to worship, to understand, to grow, I don't think you need to make that separation.
Okay.
I do think that, when we look throughout church history, sometimes the hard and fast rules, the reformers and different people like that might strike hard against certain things to create a corrective nature, kind of like on a pendulum swing.
Like, don't do that because it's wrong.
It can become an idol in and of itself. So, for example, when the people of Israel, right, in the Old Testament are sent into captivity because they abandoned their God and worshipped other gods, in that Babylonian area that, leading into that post-exilic period where they went back, now all of a sudden the law became their idol again. And so they created these 600 different rules to make sure they didn't break the law. But it became this burden that nobody in their right mind could even possibly keep to save themselves. And so again, the corrective nature there is it replacing God Himself, or something that only God can do?
The ceremony or the process or the exercise of that tradition.
Yeah.
Is that what I hear you saying? Okay. So for me, I know that sometimes religious stuff can actually get in the way.
It's possible.
Because if I'm trying to have faith, I got to do these things in my head, and it's not true, but I've got to love me more if I do these things.
No, that's the wrong motivation.
Correct, right.
That's the wrong motivation.
That's what I was trying to say.
Because we don't want to put this thing in place where we say, hey, if I do A, B, C, and D, then I know God loves me. That diminishes the work of Christ upon the cross, because the Bible tells us in the book of Romans in the New Testament that God demonstrates His love for us, and it's that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Sounds like a winner. So Redeemer Church, where's that located? It's across from some high school.
Nottingham High School.
Across from Nottingham High School. Sundays at 10 o'clock.
Yep.
And come as you are and get encouraged in the things of God. Is that a fair statement?
Fair statement.